Hi, baddies. Welcome back to another episode of Terra's Baddies Club. I have Penny with me if you're watching from the YouTube. She is my new 5 pound Pomeranian from Barkin' Bitches This Rescue. She's a rescue. She was actually found at a high kill shelter in California, and so I had to get her, and I love her so much. She has spots and kind of like a caramel color that matches my other dogs. So she fits right in. But I am so excited to have her here. I am excited for today's guest. It is an episode that I've had in the hole for a while. And given everything that happened at Bondi Beach recently, I think this is the perfect timing for the episode. And it doesn't mean I'm taking any stances on any political views, but I just do not like killing. It doesn't make me happy to hear lots of people or people getting targeted to be killed for their race. And my friend Jeannie, she has her son who was murdered because of anti-Semitism as well. So a lot of my friends, unfortunately, have experienced hatred towards their race for being Jewish. And so I think this episode is just going to talk about what is happening, what has happened, what is Judaism, and Jonah Platt, since he has being Jewish podcast, is the perfect person to have on today. So I want to welcome Jonah Platt, and let's get into this episode. Hi, Jonah. Thank you so much for coming on today. I'm so excited to have you. For the people that don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Terra. I'm Jonah Platt. I host a podcast slash TV show called Being Jewish with Jonah Platt, where I have on both Jews and notable non-Jewish allies to talk about their connections to the Jewish community and being Jewish today and contemporary Jewish identity and a whole host of other topics and issues affecting Jews today. But I have a really wide audience of Jews and non-Jews alike. And before I was doing that pod, I spent the previous almost 20 years working in entertainment, doing a variety of different things, writing for television, acting in TV, film, Broadway, doing music composition and arranging and producing, all kinds of different things. And married, have 2 kids, third on the way, and live in LA.
I love it. I love it so much. I also have to say your production value of your podcast is spectacular because my
Thank
friend
you.
also works on it.
That's right. Shout out to
Yes.
Mojo.
Yes. A Rainbow Creative, right?
That's right.
Yes. So shout out there. And also, I think it's interesting having a podcast about talking about being Jewish because there is so much out there. There's so much going on. And I also didn't know that the population is very small.
Oh, we're like the most minority of the minorities. We're 0.2% of the global population and about 2 to 3% of the American population.
Okay, it's funny because I feel like at least half of my friends are Jewish. So I think I'm in those little pockets,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like LA.
exactly. Yeah, LA, New York, the major cities have some Jews in them, but then the rest of the country really does not. There's a lot of pockets and places throughout the US and throughout the world where people have never seen a Jew and will never meet a Jew as long as they live.
Okay, now what is being Jewish? I know it's a religion and also a genetics, basically, right?
Yeah, that sort of the best way to describe it really is that it's a tribe. So if you think about like, an indigenous American tribe, it's very similar. It's like we're ancient, we have shared language, we have shared history, we have shared religion, we have shared connection to the land where we originated, all of the shared traditions, all of that stuff. So, yes, there's the religious aspect, but that's really just an aspect. And then the rest is sort of the personhood. And it wasn't really until Jews were emancipated in Europe in the 19th century, meaning they were like allowed to assimilate in the European society that Jews even began separating out the religious piece. Until then, just like a Jew was a Jew, everything you did was Jewish and you were a Jew. Once people could begin assimilating, then you started to see people becoming more secular and sort of getting rid of some of those trappings and separating it out into the religious piece.
Okay. It's really interesting you say that too. And then there's also, I know I had on some guests recently where it's a son and then his mom who's a Holocaust survivor.
Oh, wow.
And it's called Surviving the Survivor, and they have like a cool show about true crime and stuff, but it's also about like talking about him surviving his mom who survived this Holocaust. And I know that there's also a lot of trauma that is also involved in the genetics as well. Do you experience that as well?
So I believe the science is still out on how much of trauma is actually in like our epigenetics. I gratefully, my immediate ancestors were not in the Holocaust. My family came to America at the turn of the 20th century, so we were all over here before that happened. So I wouldn't say that I have that sort of genetic inherited trauma, but part of being Jewish is understanding that you've joined this continuum, this story of thousands of years of persecution and violence and mass murder and expulsion and exile, just like one horrific trauma after another is part of what you inherit as a Jew. So it's important to know that and understand that, but I wouldn't say that I embody it within my DNA.
Okay. Well, there's certain like biochemical markers in the body, and it was showing up with them. So I'm like,
Interesting.
I just like wonder, especially with you having a podcast about it, do you even talk to other people where that kind of shows up for them, or is there any consistencies?
So, like, I had a son of Holocaust survivors on my show, and I asked him about inherited trauma, and he was very flatly said, "No, I don't experience that."
Okay.
My parents really raised us to be just like American and happy and grateful for our incredible American lives. And they didn't talk so much about the Holocaust until I was much older. And so he had a wonderful, familial, wholesome upbringing. And it wasn't until he was older and went to this, like, basically like a reunion in Israel of Holocaust survivors that he like was exposed to all these other children of Holocaust survivors, some of whom felt they had inherited trauma. He was like, that was not my experience.
Okay.
Yeah.
So interesting. Well, talking about the good side of, being Jewish,
Oh
what are
yeah.
some of the great holidays out there? I know that there's a movie or series that came out called with Adam Brody.
Nobody wants this.
Yes, nobody wants this.
Yeah, I love that show. They're filming season 2 at my synagogue right now.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. In terms of holidays, like great holidays, the best is Shabbat, which is every week holiday. Every Friday, you get together with family and friends, and for 24 hours, you're meant to, and what it looks different for everybody, however observant you are or not. But the idea is to take a break from the rest of your life. Like it should feel different from the rest of the week. If you go full observance on that, that means you're not doing any work, you're not using electricity, you're not driving anywhere, you're not spending money, you're just being home, being present, being with the people you care about. And so I try to do as much of that as I can. For me, and I borrowed this from somebody else who actually was on my pod, and he inspired me. I don't go on social media on Shabbat. So that's my little break, and that's it sets it off for me from the rest of the week. So from Friday night to Saturday night, no social media, and it's great. I mean, and I often will find myself sort of looking to go on and reminding myself, no, you said you're not going to do this, and it's nice to sort of see that reflex so that I'm aware of it and be able to be like, wow, like I have this reflex that I just want to sort of compulsively check this stuff, and it's good that I'm making myself take a break from it. But we always do Shabbat dinner in my house, even if it's not like the full-on dinner. We with my kids, we do like the 3 basic blessings, like over the candle, the wine, the challah, which is a delicious egg bread, which I'm sure most people have had, but maybe not everybody. And so Shabbat's amazing. And then, there are a ton of holidays throughout the calendar year. If this podcast was 2 hours, I could tell you about all of them, but I'll like shout out the The one that is coming up soonest is called Passover. That's in April. And that is where we retell the Exodus story of the Jews who were slaves in Egypt and escaped and went to freedom. And we're meant to really relive that story every year to basically keep us humble and to keep us empathetic to others who are suffering. You're really supposed to experience it each year as if you are like you yourself are coming out of Egypt every year, which I think is a really powerful message and like a really beautiful idea to try to carry on every year and pass down to your kids. And then I'll say my favorite holiday is called Rosh Hashanah, which means like head of the year. It's the Jewish New Year, and that's the holiday that's like you're not fasting, nobody died, it's not like some tragedy you're remembering. It's just Happy New Year. You eat apples and honey to signify a sweet new year, and you just sort of reflect on the previous year and get excited for the year to come. So that's one of my favorite holidays.
Okay, I love that. I've done the one with the bread and we eat the bread, but I
You
feel
talk
like
about Challah, Shabbat?
yes,
Yeah,
yes. But I feel like all my friends were wasted and
yeah.
it just
You know, you
even
can
with
Shabbat's a good time.
My friend lighting the menorah
Yeah.
got so wasted, was doing the thing, and she was like, "Oh my gosh." I look back on that video and she's like, "That was not good, Terra."
Was it a vodka latke party?
And more so tequila.
Okay.
And
Nice.
then so I went to that and it was fun, but I feel like everyone just was wasted, you know.
I'd say that's not typical of any Hanukkah party that I've ever been to,
Okay.
except for a specifically. We had I actually helped throw this a vodka latke party, which is fun for Hanukkah. You have vodka, you have the potato latkes, which are like fried little potato pancakes. That's a good time. But generally, there is a holiday where you are supposed to get drunk. It's called Purim, and we actually just had it. It was last week,
Okay.
and we're celebrating we're celebrating the fact that the Jews weren't wiped out by this dude who wanted to kill all the Jews, but we survived. And so you celebrate by wearing costumes. It's like Jewish Halloween. You get dressed up and you're supposed to like party and get hammered and just have a great time.
So, okay, there's been multiple times where people have tried to wipe you guys out.
Yeah, over and over and over.
I live in a great area and like everyone that I know that is Jewish is pretty wealthy.
One is that's sort of the perception of American Jews today is wealth, but it's actually there's an equal number of rich Jews as there are Jews below the poverty line in this country. It's
Okay.
20% of each. It's just the trope is that Jews are rich, and that's what you see more like on TV. It's like I forget the numbers. They did a data study, but it's like 100 to 1 the times you see a rich Jew versus a poor Jew. It's just not what the media portrays. And then in terms of history, Jews were not always wealthy. Some, Jews were poor. People hated them because they're, a scourge on society. And when they're rich, it's because they want to control things and take the money. It's like you can punch up and punch down. And it's just always been easy to pick on Jews because it's such a small minority. And even in the most sort of assimilated of times, Jews have held on to what makes them Jewish. And that's counterculture, that's nonconformity. And that's threatening to the homogenous general society who's like, oh, these people aren't being like we are. And that feels threatening to me. And then a couple times in history, like, Christians or Catholics were not allowed to handle money in certain ways, like weren't allowed to do loans with interest. There was some law about it. So Jews became the money lenders out of necessity, and they weren't allowed to do other certain jobs. So a lot of times these Catholic rulers in Europe would become indebted to Jews because of the nature of the way they've set up their society. And it was much easier to kill the Jews and take their wealth than pay back their debts, which is why Jews ended up getting expelled or killed in England, expelled 3 times from France, expelled from Spain. Yeah, it's a bummer.
Well, you're just giving me a history lesson because I mean, I knew about a few of the genocides, However, I was not informed that there was so many, and that breaks my heart.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Actually, a couple episodes ago on my podcast, I do a little monologue at the opening of each, and I did one. It's called 2000 Years of Violence, and I sort of hit 10 of the major episodes of violence against Jews out of the like 100 that there are. But it's been going on forever and ever, and I think sort of one of the issues we have today with anti-Jewish bigotry is either you're not aware of any of that stuff, or you're aware of the Holocaust, but in your mind, it's this like one off. It was this crazy ahistorical event that happened, as opposed to what it really is, which is, a long continuum of repeated violence against Jews over and over and over.
Okay. And then, so we see it now happening. Are you comfortable to talk about that?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay. Like, is that kind of like a recurring thing that is just happening over and over again, and now it's like happening again just because of this long haul?
Yeah. One of the features of anti Semitism is that it shapeshifts. Sort of whatever society thinks is the worst thing, that's what it turns the Jews into. So, like in the Holocaust, it was that they're racially beneath the Germans. They're blood sucking vermin on society. They're diluting and polluting our community, so let's get rid of them. That was the worst possible thing. Now, what the worst possible thing to be in today's society is white, to be imperialist, to be a colonizer, all of these sort of buzzwords. That's the worst thing. Those are the enemy. So that's what contemporary anti-Semitism looks like, is that Jews are all white, which is not only not true, but like the majority of Jews in the world don't even present as white. So it's like completely factually inaccurate. And that Jews are colonizers, which is also factually inaccurate and not true. And that they're all Europeans, which is completely untrue. And the majority of Israelis are not even from European backgrounds. So there's all these sort of untrue, and then we talked about the rich thing, that Jews are all rich and wealthy, which again is completely untrue. So you have all that stuff, and that's what it looks like today. And we lived through a little bit of a golden age in the last couple decades. When I grew up, I didn't experience any anti-Semitism. The 80s, 2000s were a golden time for Jews in America. No issues, but they've been slowly building up again, and the vacation is over. And now we're back to what things typically have looked like in our history.
And now you have a wife. Is there any traditions with your wife that you do? Like when you get married, I know you smash the glass.
Yeah, that's one feature. Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of
Okay.
features of the Jewish wedding ceremony. Like you get married underneath something that's called a chuppah, which is it's a wedding canopy, and it's meant to sort of symbolize the home that you're going to be building together. And traditionally, the bride walks around the groom in a circle 7 times. I don't know why. Um, there's 7 blessings that are said that are like, and what people will do now is they'll sort of assign the blessings to people that are close to them. So, like your aunts and uncles will do one, your parents will do one, your best friend will do one, and they're all just blessings for the bride and groom. You traditionally will do the hora at the party, the big dance in a circle, all that craziness, lifting them up in the chair, that kind of stuff. So there's all kinds of traditions. And then it depends on how observant you are. You might do more. There's something called a bedekin. There's something called a tish. There's like all these things. My wife actually converted before we got married. So she was born Catholic,
Okay.
and is now Jewish, and has been for like 10 years now, which is pretty cool. And the only thing I'd say now that we do that's like an ongoing husband and wife tradition thing is there's this, and I don't do it every week, but there's a blessing or a prayer, or I don't even know what you describe it as. It's called Eshet Chayil, which is like, it's a woman of valor is what it means. And there's like this beautiful, like it's a poem actually is what it is, that's like praising your wife. And so sometimes I'll read that on Shabbat.
Oh, that's nice. So you get to
Yeah.
do that like every week for your wife?
Yeah, if we like take the time and I remember to do it, I give her flowers every Friday,
Okay.
so I always do that and have like a little note for her every Shabbat. But sometimes we do the Eshet Chayil.
Okay. I was like, that should happen every week.
It should. I mean, that's why it's part of the tradition. It's a beautiful thing. I mean, it's really
Yeah.
nice. It honors the woman for like all the things she does for the marriage and for the family and for the household. And yeah, it's nice.
I love that. And then you also have two kids and one on the way.
Yeah.
Is there certain traditions that you are just excited to teach them about?
That's a great question. I mean, I'd say kind of all of it. It's just like so beautiful and satisfying to watch my kids start to learn what it is to be Jewish. I mean, my 2 year old loves to sing the dreidel song from Hanukkah. I don't know why. She actually wore her Hanukkah pajamas last night. She like specifically asked for them. And my son, he goes to Jewish day school. Like he speaks a lot of Hebrew. Like he has an amazing Hebrew vocabulary. They learn Hebrew there, and that's like so cool to see. And he'll come home and have learned, classic stories from the Bible, and to hear him recount those to me is just special. And it's there's something beautiful about it, even if you're not religious, or even if you grew up not caring about that stuff. Sort of seeing your offspring come into the tribe is just a beautiful thing to see. And it's an extra layer of meaning in life, in a life that can be devoid of meaning if you don't find ways to bring meaning to it. I think a lot of what makes Judaism great is the way that it tries to bring meaning to every moment, and from little to big. And so this just adds a lot of meaning.
I love that. I feel like it's so special to have those moments with your kids. I don't have kids. I have a dog.
I have a furry kid.
Yeah,
We have two
but
of those too.
oh nice. What
It's
kind of
actually one of my
dogs?
dog's birthday today.
Happy birthday to your dog.
Thank you. She's turning 13 today. So I'm going to throw her a bark mitzvah.
Oh my gosh. I
But
love that.
yeah, that'll be a good time. She's a Labradoodle, an Aussie
Okay.
Labradoodle, and then we have a 4-year-old American Pit Bull Terrier.
Oh nice. I
Yeah.
have a Australian Shepherd, so
How beautiful.
a part of one of your dogs.
There you go. Yeah, both Aussies.
Yes. Okay, I love all this so much. I feel like I've asked you so many questions about being Jewish. Is there any questions you felt like I haven't asked that you would like me to ask you?
That's a nice thing to ask. Nothing off the top of my head. It's all gravy. It's all good. I love talking about it. It's so important to me and part of who I am. It's not all of who I am, but it's something that I, identify super strongly with and take great pride in, and enjoy talking about, because it's, something that makes me happy.
I love that. And then, okay, so one more question, and then we'll get into the Patreon portion where it's more exclusive. But okay, so what is the we talked a little bit before this call about what are the different groups out there. I know I dated a guy and he was Jewish and we made jokes about like the sheet and like
Banging through the sheet.
well, we never got to that point. It was just kisses and that's it.
Mhm.
But like is that like an actual thing that people do?
There are people who do that. So
Okay.
there is a wide spectrum of
Okay.
Jewish observance, from the ultra orthodox all the way to what would be called like reform or reconstructionist. The main groups would be like ultra orthodox, conservative, reform.
Okay.
Those are probably the biggest in numbers. The ultra orthodox are the people, if you can picture, like the ones who are most visibly Jewish, like with the beards and the black hats, and they're wearing suits, and the women are always wearing like long dresses and long sleeves. That's the ultra orthodox, and those are the ones who
Okay.
really live like by the letter of the Torah, which is like the Jewish Bible, and letter of the law, following everything, super observant. And like the most observant of those people are using a sheet from time to time, as far as I am aware. Then you get to, let's say, we'll call them modern Orthodox. Excuse me. That's people who adhere to a lot of those rules, but are also assimilated. So they may still dress modestly, but they'll wear modern clothes, and they might go out to a restaurant that's not kosher and eat the fish there. Like they won't eat the meat, they won't, because that's not kosher, but they might not only strictly eat at kosher restaurants, things of that nature. So more assimilated while still sort of living by the Torah, but less strict and more modern. Then you get to conservative, which is what I identify as, and that's sort of it's a sweet spot. It's sort of like right in the middle. It's like the most moderate version. So it's like you're keeping all the traditions, like you're celebrating all the holidays, all the basics, but you're not orthodox. So, conservative people would probably drive on Shabbat, or what's another? It's like different level of kosher. Like you might. So, like when I was growing up, we would eat meat at any restaurant. I wouldn't eat pork, wouldn't mix meat and milk, wouldn't eat shellfish. But like if I went out to a Ruth Chris, I could eat a steak there. I didn't have to go to just like a kosher steak restaurant. And I wasn't one of the ones who's like, I can only eat fish.
Okay.
So that's like an example of conservative. Yeah, doing stuff on Shabbat and not, adhering to every single like minor holiday. Like there are some that are like there's like a 1 day fast called the Fast of Esther that like I've never participated in. And then you get to Reform, which is like even less observant. So they probably, like most Reform, don't keep kosher at all, or if they do, it's much looser and definitely driving on Shabbat and probably celebrating most of the major holidays, but probably even less of the like minor ones and more likely to intermarry. Things of that nature. So it's really a wide range, and something that I try to showcase on my podcast is people from all across that spectrum and how anybody who identifies as Jewish, whether they're super observant or not observant at all, is equally Jewish in my eyes, at least.
Okay. I think I got the grasp of it.
Yeah, it's really just about like the number of laws that you follow,
Okay.
and some follow every single one to the exact letter, and some follow the spirit and the values and like the teachings, but not the letter of every single law, because they're
Okay.
more assimilated and modern, and they're as much an American in 2025 as they are a Jew.
Okay. I'm sure you probably analyzed this before, but what was Adam Brody on Nobody Wants Us?
So he is basically like he would be like a reform rabbi. So he's still a rabbi, right? So he was like still like extremely knowledgeable, clearly like devoted to being Jewish, all of that stuff, but was, like driving on Shabbat and lax about stuff, and the fact that he even dated the non-Jewish girl at all, like I can't imagine certainly an Orthodox rabbi would never do that. Maybe a conservative would hide it and sneak it. But yeah, I mean, yeah. So he would be like a reform rabbi, which still spiritual Jewish leader, very knowledgeable and literate in the religion, but not as observant, perhaps, as the others.
Okay. Perfect. Well, before we dropped off into the Patreon, where can people find your podcast? Where can people find you?
They can find the podcast, the audio, on your favorite podcast platform, Apple, Spotify, whatever. And again, it's called Being Jewish with Jonah Platt. You can find it on YouTube at youtube.com/at Being Jewish Podcast. We put everything up on video in 4K. It's really nice. And it's also on TV on a station called Jewish Broadcasting Service, JBS, which is on cable. It's on Roku. It's on Fire Stick, all of that. And then we're on all the socials. So you can find, I'd say the one I like to use the most is probably Instagram, at Jonah Platt, or at Being Jewish Podcast. And same on TikTok, at Being Jewish, at Jonah Platt. We're on X. We're on Threads, all the things.
All the socials.
You know.
Well, thank you, and we'll continue to the Patreon. Thank you for listening to today's episode with Jonah Platt. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked it, please give 5 stars. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere where podcasts, where you could review podcasts. And if you are on YouTube, please leave a comment on YouTube. Hit the like button. I really love to hear your feedback as well, and who you want to have on as a guest next, because this is the 3rd episode of the new year and we are really rolling. So I'm going to try to get out as many episodes as I can. And I am so excited just for my nonprofit to be approved. So if you feel like donating to Terra Safe Haven, please go to the link below to the show notes, and all the links are available. Until next time, I'm Terra Newell, and thank you so much for listening.